Uh,
You know what? That makes me think of another question too. Um, what do I want for myself?
yeah.
Like, what are my goals? Like, are they just materialistic? Are they things that are going to bring joy to the life of myself and others? What are the things I'm aspiring to? Are those healthy things? Like, am I aspiring to toxic things? Like, you know what I mean? That might be an indication of you being toxic also.
I think a way to find that out is who is affected by your dreams and how. Like, do you want your dreams because they will bring you money? And for that reason only. You'll be more successful as, the word successful is defined by society, which I would define differently. But, do you is it based on gaining something or is it based upon making a contribution? I feel like a goal of life should have to do with the contribution that you intend to make to the world, to everyone around you. When you think of your goals, the first thing you should preface that with is, what does my blend of traits, skills, and talents enable me to contribute to the world? And how big can I do that?
Hey,
Because
Blue. Hey,
yeah,
Blue. You might have to first self-identify what your skills, talents, and traits are before you
yeah,
can
I
even
mean,
get to
it
that point.
might make you have to go back and do some homework, but at the end of the day, you're going to need to do it, because this is
But
about
look too.
purpose. This is about why you exist. Everyone needs that. You can't get around that. Why do I have these traits? Why do I have these abilities? Why do I have these thoughts? Why do I have, these people who are drawn? This kind of person is often drawn to me. Why? Who am I here to serve? And the thing is, money and all these things are byproducts. They're not products. Money is not a product. Money is a byproduct of providing value. So if you provide the value that you're here to provide, the money will come because someone will want it enough to pay for it. Right? So
And Blue, and that's something when I was talking about earlier, looking for ways to provide value in the lives of my fellow man. That's one of the reasons. I think a lot of times because people think of me like as spiritual and I'm called like the R&B monk or whatever, that they think I don't have any selfish pursuits. Like much of what I do is selfish. I help you guys out because the more I help you out, the more God gives me. The more I'm willing to disseminate the information, the more information I'll receive. That's why the book's called Messages to Self. I realized early on that the more I was willing to pass on the information, the more information I was being given. It works the same with money. The more money I give out, the more money I get in. It's
Uh-huh.
the way the system is set up
the
to
more
work,
you
right?
teach, the more you
So
learn.
I don't
Gotta
want
give
people
again.
to think that I'm only this like magnanimous person or whatever. I have selfish pursuits of my own also. Um, so yeah, a lot of what you're talking about is really adding value. And when you're talking about you want to make $1 million, the way I frame that in my brain, if I say I want to make $1 million, instead of saying I want $1 million, I immediately begin looking for ways to add $1 million worth of value back into the system.
That's how you're
So
gonna get it anyway.
you know what I mean?
And that it's just an error of thinking to think any other way. But there's no other way to get $1 million except
That
unless somebody leaves it to you, and you can't plan for someone to leave it to you. If it has to do
right.
with your effort, it's going to be value that you place in the world from you. And everyone knows that that value came from you. So they know where to send that money to.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a book online called I think it's called The Science of Getting Rich. And
Mhm.
basically what the guy says is when you tell the universe or God or whoever you're talking to, when you say, hey, I want to make $1 million, right? Then God sends the guy, starts putting things in motion to where the guy with the $1 million check starts heading towards you from China or whatever,
Right.
right? But when he shows up with the check, you have to have something to exchange, something of value to exchange for the money. You don't just get the money. While this guy's on his way from China to America, you have to be building value to make you worthy of receiving the check. It's an exchange. It's not you just have your hand out and God drops $1 million in your hand. You have to be creating value equivalent to what you're receiving, equivalent or more than what you're receiving.
Right.
And I think that's where people fumble. They ask for things from God, and then they don't start working on themselves to create the value, equivalent to what they're asking for.
I would even say it's always more. No matter how rich a person is, their contribution or what they've done or effort that they've given is more usually than what they've received. Because if you quantify the effort of people who make it, when Jim Carrey and other very famous people were living in their cars and getting rejected every day at auditions, like their way of life was getting rejected. Like most people that you see that are famous and that have what a lot of these people who think superficially about this aren't the people who thought superficially about this, because if they do, they never would have made it because they had the thing of value so long before the value was actually paid for in money that they would have been discouraged if they weren't fixated on, but this is my purpose. And this is why I exist. I have to do this thing. This is not an option for me. Failure is not an option because it would be failure to be me. Because it's really who they are. Look at Jim Carrey and tell me he's not supposed to be a comedian. He's supposed to be a comedian. If he had done anything else with his life, it would have been because he didn't have the fortitude to be who he is. It might have been because he had a false goal, like a goal of money. Because if money doesn't come fast enough, and the other danger of having money as a goal is it can come from somewhere else. So if the $1 million you want comes from something that is not your purpose, you're satisfied and you go in that direction, but you still don't do what you were put on the earth to do. So, all money ain't good money or those type of things. Well, even if you do get it from somewhere else, would you continue in your purpose that you've identified and learn for yourself to the point where you've ingrained it in your personality to go toward that thing that gives the world a reason to have you in it? That should be your focus. All the money in the world comes from that. And if you look from really successful people, a lot of times don't care about money. They didn't do it for money. And if they lost all their money, they do it again. I know even Dr. Dre's an example. He lost everything when he left Death Row. And then he started Aftermath. And did the whole thing again, because it really doesn't matter how many times he has to do it, because it didn't happen because of a series of events. It happened because of who he is and his relentlessness about living within his purpose and the value that he was able to bring within that purpose, because he spent all his mental energy and all his time on that one thing. And it led him again to the same place. Every time he tries, he's going to end up at the same place because it's who he is. It's not luck. It's not he just ran into if he didn't run into that person, he would have ran into somebody else. If he didn't have Snoop, he would have had some other guy that we know of now because they got together. He was going to do that. So to turn yourself into a person who's going to do it is to identify the thing in you that brings that kind of value to the world around you. Put some passion on it and be relentless about it.
I'm with it.
That's a gem right there, boy. That's a gem.
It's the recipe, man. That's important what you just said. We're gonna go back and those three steps you just said, I think are going to be very important. That's an important snippet for us to really, I think, focus on. That's going to be important.